this is a really tricky one because, as everybody knows, the education sector here in Australia is absolutely critical in terms of from an export basis. So if you're looking at it from in terms of the GDP contribution, you're seeing around $37 billion in 2019, Australian dollars, I should say, in 2019. So it's our biggest services export. But it really is dependent on, firstly, how you look at those numbers in terms of that combines the tuition fees and plus the expenditure that they spend. So you could make the other argument that a lot of these international students who do come here and are actually employed and earning, and then perhaps it shouldn't necessarily be reflected in those numbers. But putting that aside and getting really into the Australian-China segment of it, China was at 12 billion in terms of their contribution on the education export side in 2019. And it is interesting when you look at it because it is a considerable amount of the total. It's around about 31%. But then if you go back to 2014, they actually comprise around 24%, and that's at a similar level to where we're actually seeing India right now at 5.5 billion. So as these tensions heat up, there's also been, the suggestions by some of Chinese state media in terms of racism that's been categorically denied by the Australian government, but still addressed because there still has been a number of incidents here in Australia. It's really going to depend on what happens in January next year because, as you know, the borders are closed right now here in Australia. So even as the semester kicks off here in July for face-to-face for universities, it's not necessarily going to be where you see the impact. So whether this is just a matter of tit-for-tat politicking, just like we saw when they had a similar kind of stance that they took against the US back in 2019 during the trade wars, it's really going to be dependent on what we see in January, Rosanna, and whether or not this tensions or these level of tensions continue to escalate between Australia and China by then and not necessarily so much now.